Hey, Pretty Girl Club. Welcome back to the Storytime series. If you have a story about colorism, texturism, featureism, racism, or if there's anything about the exotical experience that you think the world should know, please email me your story at exoticalsunited@gmail.com because we finally have tens of thousands of people who are willing to listen to the exoticals. They listen to us talk about weight loss, they listen to us talking about social climbing, and now it's time for them to hear our side of the story because we are tired of women of other backgrounds or phenotypes speaking on our behalf. So from here on out, if anyone tries to speak on behalf of the exoticals, they will be checked by one of the exoticals. And that's why we have our Storytime series. It's so we can finally share our perspective. But this pretty girl says, "Hey, Exoticals United. I hope this message finds you well. I have a theory that I think would be great. I believe a lot of Black women suffer from not being able to express their emotional needs. Story time. At a job, I had a coworker who was not picked for the same position that I had. I'm in my 20s, she was in her 40s. She started a fight with me about nothing. Because of this, she yelled and berated me instead of making her emotional needs known. I had another friend as well, in her 20s, who complained about me outshining her when I started to wear curly extensions and show my monoracial MLS side. I went on an in depth beauty journey, and due to that journey, I was able to get several jobs. And I found out that beauty was my passion as a result. When I was in high school, at 14, I had a family friend who was jealous of me and this guy I was with who looked like Drake. She settled for his friend. Then she set me up to be gang SA'd and later set him up to be robbed and shot due to the Degrassi storyline. Then she told my friend that she tried to sleep with him in a bathroom instead of just stating her emotional need to be with an MLS guy. So, needless to say, I think they take it out on MLS women who do express our emotional needs because a lot of MLS women don't have a victim mentality. Finally, I think Sierra is an example of this. People idolize the fact that she wrote down her emotional needs in a partner and was able to receive them. I hope this wasn't too long. After watching you, I was able to draw the parallels. I love the channel that you have. You've helped me to grow so much, and your perspective has helped me to focus more on specific emotional needs and how to do the work to get them. Yeah, I think a lot of women, they grow up in households with parents who are in survival mode. So if you grew up with like a pick me mother, for example, let's say these women's first feminine role model was a codependent woman who was in survival mode or a woman who was chasing after a whole bunch of men. Have you ever been around someone where maybe her mom had a whole bunch of different boyfriends growing up or she wasn't able to teach her daughter how to state her emotional needs? I mean, let's be honest, if you come from an underprivileged background, emotional intelligence, that's definitely not one of the priorities. I've noticed that for people who grew up underprivileged, usually the priority is getting money, paying the bills, making sure that nothing gets worse, trying to survive out in the hood or whatever. So, what happens is a lot of these young girls, they're not taught how to survive, and they're definitely not taught how to thrive or live a soft life. So, when they witness you actually going for what you want, so meeting your internalized beauty standard without shame, because have you ever noticed that in the Black community, a lot of times people try to use shame as a weapon? I talked about this recently, and a lot of you guys were saying it too, that in the Black community, there is this thing where they demonize beauty enhancements a lot. That's why you have people on YouTube right now trying to make fun of exoticals for having blonde highlights or for wearing like makeup or for wearing wigs and stuff like that. And it's hilarious because the Black community as a whole is the main community that uses beauty enhancements to the point where it doesn't even match their texture or the foundations don't even match their skin complexion. But then you have people in the same culture demonizing the exotical for doing the exact same thing. So I've noticed that is a big cultural flaw where it's like you have women shaming other women for doing the same thing they wanted to do. So, like in the case of this pretty girl, when she said that her friend was like talking shit or trying to set her up, And then she ended up wanting to sleep with that same exact guy in the bathroom. So it's almost as if you, as the pretty girl, it's almost as if you represent the type of lifestyle that they could never have access to. That's why I say all the time that a lot of people want to date us or create us. They either want to date our male counterparts, so they want to date a man who is biracial or whatever, or light skinned or mixed race, or they want to create children that have your same skin complexion, your same hair texture. Let's say you're dark skinned and you have type 3 hair. There are a lot of women who want to create you. And that's why you see a lot of women chasing after like Indian men or whatever. Have you ever noticed that? A lot of the unambiguous people who date Indian people, they will have a disdain and a jealousy against like kind of these Caribbean, West Indian exoticals who have kind of that straighter hair texture. I've definitely noticed that pattern. So it's like people, they don't want to admit their emotional needs. They don't want to admit that they themselves want to social climb. And so then they make fun of exoticals for going where we are celebrated. Isn't that hilarious? They'll say to exoticals, oh, well, this guy's only dating you because he puts you on a pedestal. Or, you only got to where you are because you're privileged. But then in the same breath, if you go on their YouTube channels, you'll see them talking about how to attain exotic privilege by being in an all-white neighborhood. So they'll shame you for having a quote unquote exotic privilege while trying to seek the same privilege themselves. I've noticed one of the core needs of women with inferiority complexes is they have an emotional need for attention. And then they'll never admit it because within the Black culture, obviously, you are heavily shamed if you want attention. I think part of that comes from like this cultural phenomenon where you have to be humble. You have to prove you're down to earth. You have to prove that you're humble. You have to prove that like you get along with everybody else. And if you admit that you want attention, or if you act like you want attention, then that is viewed as thinking you're better or doing too much. So I think that's one of the emotional needs. And that's why sometimes you see women acting out. For example, shaking their asses on top of the bar, wearing clothing that doesn't fit the event. And I'm not saying that women have to dress modest, but I have noticed that sometimes when a woman is attention starved, she will act out in certain ways to try to get attention. For example, there was that one woman, she actually was an unambiguous woman in Texas. She went viral for walking into a fine dining Black-owned restaurant. She went viral for walking in there naked, and she was an obese, unambiguous woman. Okay, so that's an example of being attention starved and not admitting that that's one of your emotional needs. And so you end up acting out. And then when people ask you later on, hey, why'd you do that? You can't articulate why. And so I think that some women, they're so starved for attention that even negative attention that makes their collective image bad, it's still a form of attention. And that's why you see a lot of women creating these channels or making complaints their personality type. You know how they say, oh, you're making your race your personality type. You're making your beauty your personality type. Okay, well, I'd rather have that than making my traumas my personality type. Because a lot of people, they end up trauma dumping on everyone because that's their format of getting attention. Or they do these desperate things like trying to sleep with a random guy in the bathroom because your friend was dating him. That's an example of being attention starved. And have you ever noticed that a lot of women, they want to sleep with your sloppy seconds or your leftovers, or they want to sleep with your boyfriend because it makes her feel like she's on the same level as you? Because it's like, out of all the billions of men in the world, and plus, if you're so pretty, that means you have options, right? So why is it that you had to choose the option of the one that your friend was with? It's because there's a psychological component there. She feels like this exotical in the story time, she felt like she was a competition. So that's why she wanted to quote unquote win or feel like she's on the same level by having access to the same men. This is also why sometimes you'll have friends where they ask you a whole bunch of questions about dating. Like they're obsessed. Have you ever had a friend that's like obsessed with your dating life? Even if you're like decentered from men, they still are obsessed with who's talking to you. Well, who's texting you? Well, you went out this weekend. Did anybody walk up and talk to you? Did anybody hit on you? How many people hit on you? They're so obsessed because deep down inside, they're comparing themselves. It's because, like I said, as the Pretty Girl Club, we are a lot of people's standard of beauty. We are their standard of living. We are their standard of dating. That's why you see women wanting to sleep with the same men. And by the way, that's also why they make videos such as preference to baby mama pipeline, or they examine who the exoticals date and sleep with because we are their standard of dating. So that's why they're so fascinated with our dating lives. That's why they don't give a fuck about unambiguous women and who they're dating. I noticed they study women who meet their internalized beauty standard. I don't see people obsessing over who the uglies date. I don't see them doing that. I don't see them making fun of ugly women. Oh, you got dumped, ha ha. No, because they actually pity those women. So whenever they're making fun of your relationship status, or they're like spying on your relationship, or they're trying to sleep with the same guy that you're sleeping with, all of that points to the fact that you are her standard. You are her standard in one way or another. So whether it's you are her beauty standard, you are her social climbing standard, you are her desirability standard. And a lot of women, because they don't know how to meet their own emotional needs, they can't articulate that. They can't describe why they're doing that. So they just end up acting out. But what do you ladies think? Let me know in the comment section, and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.